Elena never thought her life would change in a single day. But it happened so fast that she barely understood how she ended up standing in front of the village council, with her hands shaking and her heart pounding. The sun was high, burning down on the dusty street, and the faces staring at her were harsh, cold, and filled with judgment she did not deserve. She had lived in that frontier village her whole life, working hard, keeping quiet, trying to follow rules even when they never felt fair. But today, they decided she had broken a rule she never meant to break. Everything started when she spoke up during a heated argument between two families. She only tried to calm things down. But someone blamed her for speaking out of place, for causing disrespect. And suddenly, the council called her in as if she had committed something terrible. Elena's voice trembled as she tried to explain, but no one listened. They had already chosen the outcome, already formed their opinions before she walked in. Her words felt small in the room full of older men who believed they controlled everything. When the council leader stood and announced the punishment, Elena felt the world go silent around her. She had heard stories of old traditions, things rarely practiced anymore, but she never believed they would use it against her. The punishment was something she didn't expect: marriage. And not just marriage, but being given away to a cowboy who lived miles away from the village. She didn't know him, had never met him, but the council said it was the proper way, to teach her a lesson about respect and obedience. Her jaw dropped, and the room spun for a moment. She felt fear twist inside her stomach. Marriage was supposed to be a choice. It was supposed to be something two people entered with trust, understanding, maybe even love. But now, they wanted to use it as a tool to punish her, as if she were nothing more than someone to be traded. She tried to speak, tried to fight back, but the council didn't look at her face. They treated her like she wasn't even standing there. Elena felt helpless and small. But then her eyes caught sight of someone standing in the back. A tall man, with a dust-covered hat and a calm expression. He was not part of the council. He looked more surprised than anyone, as if he had no idea he was being involved. That man was Cole Dawson. Cole was a cowboy who lived several miles outside the village, running a quiet ranch with a few workers. He came into town only for supplies or to help during emergencies. People knew he was honest, hard-working, and calm, but he kept to himself and never caused trouble. When he heard the council wanted him to be involved in something, he showed up out of respect, but he never expected this. His brows lowered slightly as the council explained the decision. He looked at Elena, then at the men who spoke as if she wasn't there. Cole had a steady presence, the kind that made others pause. He wasn't loud or aggressive. He simply had a calm, firm way about him. When the council leader said, "You will take her in marriage," Cole didn't nod. He didn't agree. He stayed silent, his face unreadable. Elena somehow found courage to lift her eyes to him. She thought he might be pleased, or maybe annoyed, or maybe ready to accept her because the council wanted it. But his expression held none of that. Instead, she saw surprise, confusion, and something that felt almost like discomfort, not directed at her, but at the situation. Before she could figure out what to say, everything moved too fast. The council pushed the decision through. People outside whispered as she was led out of the building. She felt her breath shaking as Cole followed behind her. Not touching her, not saying anything, but walking at a respectful distance. A wagon waited outside, ready to take her to the ranch. Elena felt as if she were leaving her whole life behind. But not by choice. She wasn't prepared. She didn't have her things. She didn't even know the man she was supposed to live with. When she finally climbed into the wagon, her hands trembled so hard she had to hold them together. Cole climbed in after a moment, but sat on the opposite side, giving her space, as if he understood she needed room to breathe. The horses began to move forward, and the village grew smaller behind them. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The sound of the wheels and the horses' hooves filled the silence. Elena stared at her lap, feeling lost. Cole glanced at her once or twice, but didn't push her to talk. Finally, he cleared his throat softly and said, "I didn't know they planned this." His voice was calm, gentle, not harsh at all. Elena felt a small relief inside her. She looked up and met his eyes. They were steady, soft brown, with a hint of worry. "I know," she whispered, her voice weak. Cole nodded slightly. "I didn't agree to it either." Something about his honesty made her shoulders relax a bit. At least she knew he wasn't someone who wanted control over her. He seemed just as confused as she was. She didn't feel afraid of him, but she still felt unsure of everything. The journey to his ranch was long. The land stretched wide with rolling hills, tall grass, and strong sunlight. Elena looked at the open fields, feeling both free and trapped at the same time. She had never been so far from her village. She had never imagined living somewhere like this. When they arrived, the ranch looked peaceful. A large wooden house, a barn, a few horses grazing near the fence. Workers greeted Cole respectfully, but their eyes shifted to Elena with curiosity. Cole simply told them, "Give her space. She's been through a lot today." His voice had a firmness that made everyone step back without question. Elena stepped down from the wagon carefully. Her legs felt weak. She didn't know where to go or what she was supposed to do now. Cole walked ahead a little, then turned to face her. "Come inside. You can rest. We'll figure everything out calmly." His steady tone made her feel safe enough to follow. The house was warm and clean, simple but welcoming. Cole walked slowly, making sure she didn't feel rushed. When they reached a room with a large bed and a window facing the sunset, he stopped at the doorway. "You can stay here," he said softly. "It's the biggest room. You deserve comfort." Then he paused, choosing his words carefully. "You don't owe me anything. You don't have to follow any rules from the council here. This is your space. You and..." Elena stared at him in surprise. She expected anger, coldness, or someone who would treat her poorly. Instead, she saw a man who respected her, who understood she was hurting, and who didn't want to control her. She whispered, "Why are you being so kind?" Cole looked down for a moment before meeting her eyes again. "Because what they did wasn't right, and because you're a person, not a punishment." For the first time since morning, Elena felt her throat tighten with emotion. Not fear, but something warm and unfamiliar. She had never heard anyone speak to her like that. Cole gently placed a folded blanket on a chair and said, "I'll make some food. You can rest. Take all the time you need." He stepped away quietly, leaving her alone in the room. Elena sat on the edge of the bed, her heart still trembling, but for the first time, she felt a bit of safety wrap around her. She thought their first moment together would be full of awkwardness or fear, but instead, it was filled with gentleness and respect, something she had never been given before. And in that simple moment, something deep inside her began to change. Elena woke early the next morning, long before the sun fully rose. She had barely slept, not because she felt unsafe, but because everything was new, strange, and overwhelming. The bed was soft, the room was warm, and the house was quiet, very different from her old village home, where walls were thin and noise traveled easily. Here, silence rested over everything, broken only by the gentle sounds of animals beginning their day somewhere outside. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. The memory of yesterday pressed against her chest. She still couldn't fully accept that she now lived on a ranch with a man she had never met before. But the picture of Cole's calm face and gentle voice came back to her, softening her breath. He hadn't shown anger, bitterness, or control. Instead, he gave her space, comfort, and his biggest room. She didn't know how someone could be so kind after being forced into something he didn't want. As she stood and walked quietly toward the window, she saw the sky painted with early morning colors, soft pink and gold. A few horses moved near the fence, their movements slow, peaceful. The ranch looked like a place built for calm living, not for punishment. When she opened the door to step into the hallway, she smelled something cooking: bread, maybe eggs, something warm. She hesitated before walking toward the sound. She didn't want to intrude. She still didn't know how she was supposed to behave here. But she also didn't want to hide in her room forever. When she reached the kitchen doorway, she saw Cole standing near the stove, quietly stirring something in a pot. His sleeves were rolled up, and the morning light made the room bright and soft. He turned slightly when he heard her footsteps. "You're awake early," he said, with a gentle tone. Elena nodded slowly. "I couldn't sleep much." Cole gave a small, understanding smile. That happens when life suddenly changes. He kept his eyes respectful, never letting them linger in a way that made her uncomfortable. "Breakfast is almost ready. You're welcome to sit." She stepped in carefully and sat at the wooden table. Cole set aside his work and placed a warm plate in front of her. A simple meal, but made with care. Elena hadn't expected anyone to cook for her. In her village, she did most of the cooking for her family. Here, she felt strangely looked after. "Thank you," she said softly. "You don't have to thank me," Cole replied. "It's what anyone should do." They ate quietly at first. Elena took small bites, trying to relax. Cole's presence didn't feel heavy. It felt steady, like the quiet earth beneath her feet. He didn't push her to talk, didn't ask questions she wasn't ready to answer. That alone made her feel safer than she expected. After a few minutes, he spoke again, voice calm and even. "I want you to know something important. You're free here. I don't expect anything from you. Not work, not duties, not anything the council might have implied." Elena looked up, meeting his eyes for a brief moment. "But this is your home. I don't want to be a burden." "You won't be," he said firmly, but kindly. "And you don't owe me anything. Not today. Not ever. You can take your time to settle, or you can ask to leave whenever you want. You have choices here. Choices." The word felt unreal. She hadn't been given a choice in so long that she almost forgot what it felt like to have one. After breakfast, Cole showed her around the ranch not as someone giving orders, but as someone gently guiding a newcomer. He showed her the barn, the water well, the small vegetable garden, and the corral where the horses stayed. Elena followed quietly, taking everything in. "What kind of work do you usually do here?" she finally asked, stopping beside the barn door. "A bit of everything," Cole answered. "Feeding animals, fixing fences, checking cattle. But you don't have to do any of it unless you want to." She thought for a moment. "I want to try helping. I can't stay inside all day." Cole nodded. "All right. But only what you're comfortable with." He handed her a small bucket of feed for the chickens. It wasn't heavy, but Elena still handled it carefully. The chickens gathered quickly, pecking the ground. She found herself smiling a little without meaning to. Cole watched from nearby. "You seem good with animals." "I worked with them back home," she said quietly. "Goats mostly, and some horses." "That explains why they trust you so quickly," Cole said with a warm expression. The small tasks they did together weren't difficult: feeding animals, checking the fences, gathering eggs. But the simplicity of it brought Elena a strange peace. There was no shouting, no harsh orders, no judgment. Cole gave instructions gently and stepped back to let her work at her own pace. At one point, she climbed a small ladder to reach a loose rope near the barn roof. She reached too far, and her foot slipped. Her heart jumped as her body tilted backward. Before fear could tighten in her chest, she felt strong hands catch her from behind. "Careful," Cole said softly, steadying her. The moment was brief, but his hands were firm and respectful, holding only long enough to make sure she was safe. When she stood fully on the ground again, he quickly stepped back to give her space. "Are you all right?" he asked. his voice filled with genuine concern. Elena nodded, though her breath was unsteady. Yes, thank you. Cole didn't smile, didn't make it a dramatic moment. He simply nodded, as if catching someone from a fall was a natural thing to do. But to Elena, it meant something more. It showed her he would protect her without expecting anything in return. As the day continued, they worked in comfortable silence, speaking occasionally. Elena noticed many small things about Cole, how he treated each animal with patience, how he never raised his voice at the workers, how he checked injuries with gentle movements, and how he always explained things calmly instead of assuming she knew everything. At midday, they sat under the shade of a large oak tree near the corral. Cole offered her water and asked, "Are you tired? We can stop for the day if you want." "I'm fine," Elena said. "It feels good to do something useful." "It's not about being useful," Cole replied. "It's about being comfortable." She looked at him carefully. "Why are you always so kind?" He sighed softly. "Because I know what it's like to feel powerless. I've seen people get treated unfairly. I won't be part of that." His words settled deep inside her. She had never heard a man from her village speak with that kind of understanding. Her old home had strict beliefs about people like her, young, quiet, expected to obey. But here, Cole treated her like someone with value. When afternoon turned into evening, they returned to the house. Elena helped prepare dinner, chopping vegetables while Cole made stew. The small kitchen became warm, with the smell of cooking. They worked side by side without awkwardness. At the table, Elena finally felt brave enough to ask the question sitting in her heart. "Do you regret this?" Her voice was soft, almost afraid. Cole set down his spoon and looked at her with steady eyes. "Regret the council's decision?" "Yes. They shouldn't force anyone. But regret having you here?" He shook his head gently. "No, you're not the problem. You're just caught in something unfair." Her breath caught slightly. "And you don't think I'm trouble?" "No," he said with certainty. "You're someone who deserves respect." The room felt warmer after his words. Elena couldn't say anything at first. She just stared at her bowl, unable to hide the small smile forming on her lips. Before bed, Cole walked her to her room again, stopping at the doorway the same way he did the night before. "If you need anything," he said quietly, "I'll be in the next room." Elena nodded. "Thank you. For today." "You don't have to thank me," Cole replied softly. She went inside, feeling something new inside her chest, something soft, steady, and hopeful. She realized that the fear she felt yesterday was slowly being replaced with trust. Cole's actions, his words, his calm nature, everything about him felt safe. As she lay down to sleep, she realized that living here didn't feel like punishment. It didn't feel like a forced life. It felt like the beginning of a life where she could breathe freely for the first time. And without meaning to, she felt herself looking forward to tomorrow. Days passed on the ranch, each one bringing a little more comfort into Elena's heart. She started learning the rhythm of this new life, the soft morning light, the sound of horses moving in their corral, the smell of fresh hay, and the quiet strength that lived in every corner of the ranch. She still felt unsure at times, still wondered what her future would look like. But she no longer woke with fear. Cole's gentle ways, his respectful distance, and his steady presence gave her a sense of safety she had never experienced before. The workers on the ranch also grew used to her. At first, they watched her with curiosity, unsure of who she was or why she suddenly lived with Cole. But as days passed, they saw how she worked hard, how she treated the animals with care, and how polite she always was. They realized she wasn't someone trying to take advantage of anything, just someone trying to understand her place in a world that had changed too quickly. One morning, as Elena carried a basket of vegetables from the garden, she noticed Cole repairing a broken fence post near the cattle field. She walked over and placed the basket down before speaking. "Do you need help?" she asked softly. Cole looked up, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. "Only if you want to help," he said, with a gentle smile. "I do," she replied, stepping closer. He showed her how to hold the plank while he hammered it into place. Their hands brushed once, only for a moment, but the touch made Elena's heart beat a little faster. Cole immediately stepped back, giving her space, but she noticed a faint warmth in his eyes. They finished the repair quickly, and Cole nodded at the fence, as if checking his work. "Good job," he said simply. Elena felt a small spark of pride. It had been so long since anyone acknowledged her efforts in a kind way. But that peaceful rhythm of ranch life began to shift when whispers from the village reached them. It started when a traveling trader passed by the ranch. He greeted Cole with friendly words, bought some fresh eggs, and then turned to Elena with a curious stare that made her uneasy. After a moment, he leaned toward Cole and whispered something low. Something Elena couldn't hear, but could sense was about her. When the trader left, she asked quietly, "What did he say?" Cole's face wasn't angry, but it grew serious. "He said the village is talking again." Elena's stomach tightened. "About me?" Cole nodded. "They're saying you're living here too freely. That you should return." Elena felt a cold wave rush through her. Return? To what? To judgment? To punishment? To people who never cared for her voice or her feelings? Just the thought made her chest tighten. Cole noticed her fear and stepped closer, not too close, just enough to let her know she wasn't alone. "You're not going anywhere unless you choose to," he said firmly. "No one has the right to drag you back." "But they might try," Elena whispered. "Then they'll deal with me," Cole replied, his voice calm but strong. The next few days were tense. Elena tried to stay busy, helping around the ranch, but she felt a shadow following her thoughts. She remembered how harsh the council could be, how quickly they judged anyone who didn't obey their rules. She wondered if they would show up, demanding she return to a life she never wanted. One afternoon, as she was brushing one of the horses, she heard the sound of hooves approaching. She looked up and saw 3 riders coming down the road toward the ranch. Her breath stopped. She recognized 2 of them. They were men from her village. Cole stepped out of the barn just in time to see them arrive. He stood straight, shoulders squared, calm but alert. Elena stayed near the horse, unsure what to do. The men dismounted, their eyes sharp and suspicious. One of them, a tall man with a stern face, spoke first. "We need to talk," he said. Cole didn't move. "Then talk." "We heard she's living here," the man continued, nodding toward Elena with a cold look. "That's not what the council intended." Cole's jaw tightened slightly. "What the council intended doesn't matter here." The second man stepped forward. "She was sent to you because she needed correction. Instead, you're letting her roam around, like she owns the place." Elena felt her heart pound painfully. The words hurt, even though she knew they weren't true. She didn't own anything. She was only trying to exist peacefully. Cole's voice dropped slightly in tone, becoming more serious. "She's not something to correct. She's a person." "That's not how things are done in the village," the first man snapped. "That's why she's not in the village anymore," Cole replied simply. The men exchanged annoyed glances. It was clear they didn't expect resistance. They probably imagined Cole would hand Elena over without question. But Cole stood between them and her, steady as a wall. Finally, the second man called out, "Elena, step forward." Her breath froze. Her hands shook slightly. But before she could move, Cole stepped between them more firmly. "She doesn't answer to you," he said, without raising his voice. "And she won't be spoken to like that." "She belongs with us?" the first man insisted. "She belongs where she feels safe," Cole answered. The men grew angry, their faces tight with frustration. They looked past Cole at Elena, expecting her to come running just because they demanded it. For a moment, Elena felt trapped between fear and the memory of how quiet life had become on the ranch. She didn't want to confront them, but she didn't want to hide either. Then, something inside her stirred something that had been quiet for years. She stepped out from behind the horse and came to stand a few steps behind Cole. Not too close, not too far, just enough for her voice to reach them. "I'm not going back," she said softly but clearly. The men looked surprised. They had never heard her speak with strength before. "Elena, this is not your choice," one of them argued. "Yes, it is," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "I'm not a mistake you can fix. And I'm not a punishment for anyone." Tensive. The words came from deep within her, words she had held for years. Cole glanced back at her for a moment, his eyes warm with pride. Then, he turned to the men and said, "You heard her. Now, leave." The men stared for a moment, then turned to their horses. Before mounting, one of them muttered, "The council won't like this." Cole replied calmly, "They don't have to." When they finally rode away, leaving a trail of dust behind them, Elena let out a long, shaky breath. Her knees felt weak, and she had to hold the stable door to keep steady. Cole stepped closer, not touching her, but standing near enough for comfort. "You did well," he said softly. "I'm proud of you." Elena looked up at him, her eyes full of emotion. "I was scared." "It's all right to be scared," Cole said. "Courage isn't about being fearless. It's about standing anyway." She swallowed hard, feeling tears threaten at the edges of her eyes. But they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of relief and strength. Cole offered her a gentle smile. "You're safe here. I'll make sure of it." Elena nodded, wiping her eyes. "I believe you." That evening, the ranch felt quieter than usual. The sky was painted with soft orange light, and the air carried a calm warmth. Elena helped prepare dinner, moving with a mix of tiredness and pride. She had stood up for herself for the first time in her life. She had spoken words she once feared to say. And Cole had stood beside her without hesitation. As they ate together, there was a soft bond between them, unspoken but real. Elena felt comfort she didn't fully understand yet. Cole felt a quiet respect for her bravery. Neither needed to explain it. Before she went to bed, Elena paused in the hallway. She turned to look at Cole, who was putting away dishes. "Thank you," she whispered. Cole looked up, meeting her eyes gently. "You don't have to thank me. I meant every word I said." Elena nodded slowly, her heart full of something warm and growing. For the first time, she understood that she didn't just feel safe with Cole, she felt seen, valued, and protected in a way that no one had ever shown her before. And as she closed her door for the night, she knew the days ahead would bring more challenges, more choices, and more moments that would shape the life she was building. A life she was now choosing. The days after the confrontation passed slowly, but the fear Elena once felt didn't return the same way. Something inside her had shifted on the day she stood before the villagers. She still remembered the tremble in her voice, the tightness in her chest, and the cold stares from the men. But she also remembered Cole standing like a shield between her and everything that frightened her. She remembered her own strength rising in her words, a strength she never realized she had. For the first time in her life, she felt like she could shape her own future. Life at the ranch settled into a gentle rhythm again. Elena worked with the animals, helped in the garden, and learned more about how the ranch functioned. She noticed small things about Cole, the way he checked the fences every morning, the way he spoke softly to the horses, the way he always made sure she felt safe before ending any conversation. These small things weren't dramatic, but they carried more meaning than grand gestures. One afternoon, while she carried a bucket of water toward the corral, she saw Cole sitting on the porch steps, repairing a saddle strap. His hat shaded part of his face, and he looked peaceful, focused, calm. She watched him for a moment before walking over and placing the bucket down. "What are you fixing?" she asked gently. He looked up at her, his expression warming. "Just an old strap," he said. It's been wearing out for a while. Can I help? She asked. He paused, then handed her a small piece of leather. If you want to, hold this here while I sew it. She sat beside him on the porch step. The wood was warm beneath her, and she felt a soft breeze brush her face. As she held the leather piece steady, Cole worked quietly beside her, his hands steady and sure. The silence between them didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt peaceful. You're becoming part of the ranch, Cole said softly after a moment. The animals trust you. The workers speak well of you. Everwith. Elena lowered her eyes, touched by his words. I'm trying. I want to be useful. You are, he said firmly. But you don't have to try so hard. You deserve rest, too. She gave him a shy smile. I don't mind working. It keeps my mind calm. Cole nodded. Then work as you like. Just remember, you're free to choose. That word again, choose. It made her chest feel warm. As the afternoon sun began to lower, the two of them finished the repair and set the saddle aside. Elena stood to take the bucket again, but Cole gently stopped her. I'll take it, he said. You've done enough today. Elena didn't argue. She let him carry it, feeling a soft flutter inside her. Cole wasn't someone who tried to impress her or act brave. He simply did what needed to be done with quiet strength. That evening, as they ate dinner, Cole grew quiet at the table. Elena noticed the distant look in his eyes. Are you thinking about the village? She asked softly. Cole nodded slowly. I think they might come again. Maybe not soon, but eventually. Elena felt a knot form in her stomach, but she didn't panic. She had faced them before. She could do it again, especially with Cole by her side. She placed her spoon down and took a small breath. If they come again, I want to speak for myself. Cole looked at her, surprise flickering in his expression. You don't have to do that. I'll handle. I know you will, she said softly. But I want to speak too. I want them to hear me clearly. Cole studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, his expression full of quiet pride. If that's what you want, I'll stand beside you. Elena felt a wave of comfort wash through her. Thank you. Later that night, she lay in her bed, staring at the soft glow of the moon through her window. She thought about her old village, the noise, the judgment, the heavy expectations. She remembered the way she used to walk with her head down, afraid to speak. But now, she pictured herself standing beside Cole, speaking with confidence. She never imagined she could change this much in such a short time. She never imagined feeling this safe. The next morning, she woke to find a light knock on her door. Cole's voice came softly through the wood. She smiled to herself and opened the door. Cole stood there with a gentle expression, not stepping inside, always respecting her space. They walked to the kitchen together and shared a quiet breakfast of warm bread and tea. Afterward, Cole asked if she wanted to join him for a ride around the ranch. I'd like that, she said, feeling her chest warm with a new kind of excitement. They saddled 2 horses, Cole's strong chestnut gelding, Miles, and a gentle mare named Willow for Elena. She had grown fond of Willow, who always nuzzled her hand and followed her softly around the corral. As they rode through the open fields, the wind brushed against Elena's face, carrying the scent of wildflowers and sun-warmed grass. The ranch seemed endless, wide and open, like a world made for freedom. Cole rode slightly ahead, then slowed down so they moved side by side. Do you miss anything from your old home? He asked gently. Elena thought for a moment. I miss my mother's cooking, she admitted, and the sound of the river behind our house. But I don't miss the way people treated me. Cole nodded slowly. You deserve better. I didn't know what I deserved before, Elena said quietly. But I'm learning. Cole's eyes softened. Good. They stopped near a hill that overlooked the ranch. The view was breathtaking. The barns, the house, the grazing cattle, and the open land stretching far into the horizon. Elena felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. "This place," she said softly. "It feels like home." Cole's breath caught for a moment, but he didn't show surprise. Instead, he spoke with gentle honesty. "I'm glad you feel that way." They stayed on the hill for a while, talking about small things, the weather, the animals, stories from Cole's childhood. Elena learned that Cole had grown up mostly alone after losing his parents early in life. He had built the ranch through years of hard work and determination. She felt a deep respect for him, not just because of how he treated her, but because of the quiet strength he carried in every part of his life. As they rode back, Elena realized that the fear she once had of being unwanted, of being treated as a punishment, had faded. She was no longer the frightened girl brought to the ranch by force. She was someone choosing her path, step by step. And when she looked at Cole, riding calmly beside her, she felt something warm and steady growing inside her heart. That evening, after they finished the day's chores, Cole walked her to her room again. But this time, Elena paused instead of going in immediately. "Cole," she said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. If you could, would you have chosen this? Chosen to have me here?" I mean, Cole's expression softened deeply. He took a slow breath before speaking. "I didn't choose how it happened, but I would choose having you here now." Elena felt her heart tighten in the gentlest way. "And you?" he asked softly. "Would you choose to stay?" She looked into his eyes, seeing all the kindness, patience, and quiet care he had shown her from the first moment she stepped onto the ranch. She thought about the peace she felt here, the freedom, the safety, the growing connection between them. "Yes," she said quietly, her voice full of truth. "I choose to stay." Cole's eyes warmed, and for a moment, the air between them felt full of something new, something soft and hopeful. "Then we can start everything again," he said gently, not as something forced, but as something real. Elena nodded, feeling tears rise in her eyes not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of finally choosing her own life. As she went into her room and closed the door softly behind her, she felt a deep calm settle in her heart. The ranch wasn't a place of punishment anymore. It was her home. And Cole wasn't a stranger forced into her life. He had become the steady presence she trusted, respected, and cared for. Their story hadn't started the right way. But now, each day felt like a new beginning. A beginning she chose,